Welcome to Effective Cannabis Conversations, the show where knowledge meets curiosity and stigma takes a back seat. I'm Debi Wimberley, your advocate for all things empowering, educating, and elevating in the world for better health.
At HashDash, what we're building is a platform to empower consumers to actually take control of their cannabis journey. Right now, many of us are in the backseat of this vehicle when it comes to cannabis. One, because it can be overwhelming and there's a lot of misinformation out there and poor guidance. And two, it can just be very intimidating. And where do you start? And so we wanted to bring in technology to help empower and break down some of those barriers to confusion and to digestible bits through our educational resources, but additionally through our algorithm, where we can help guide that consumer to a better outcome. And we wanted to partner with Effective Cannabis because that's very close and near aligned to what you're doing on the patient and the medical front. And I think back to what we were talking about earlier, there's number and powers. We can't do our mission alone. It's probably one of the biggest missions I think out there, which is empowerment and education. And it's something that's going to happen in perpetuity. To your point, there's new information, new data that changes what we knew or how we thought about X or Y. And so I think constantly partnering with others that are fighting for the same thing and are actually doing it for the benefit of the consumer and the right intention is the most important piece.
And that we're so aligned. The Effective Cannabis Newsletter was developed to educate the consumer so that they knew the information that would hit them for their pain points and what they're looking for. But it also would introduce them to people that are the leaders and the experts in this industry so that they could see where this information is coming from. We have a ton of information that is out there today. And understanding who are the experts that are going in this process and who are creating the content, who are studying the content, who are studying the plant is critical in understanding how this plant is moving forward. This is a new technology and this is a new industry, and building something around our health. We learned about lung health, cardiovascular systems a long time ago. We're just now learning about the endocannabinoid system, and it's a consistently evolving train of thoughts, education, new discoveries. We just had a webinar on flavonoids and understanding flavonoids. So it's really important that we have all this information and that people have a trusted source. And that's where I see that HashDash and Effective Cannabis come together, because we're bringing together the education and we're bringing together the tool to identify what is the symptom that you're looking to treat when you enter the dispensary. And then on the back end of that, we'll be adding more education so that you can find that education and dig a little deeper. But most people's first entry into cannabis is through a dispensary. And it is walking in cold without knowing anything and asking that person, I want to feel, let's just say, I don't want to be in as much pain as I'm in. That's different for every single person and how that's handled. And there's a lot of other factors that go around that. That person behind the counter doesn't know that. So that's where partnering together will allow us to give more information so that people can customize the benefit for their health of what they're trying to accomplish. Because no matter what you're looking for, everybody wants to live the absolute best quality of life possible. And learning about your endocannabinoid system and how it relates to your health is a big part of that. And that's been missing. And that's what we're hoping that this partnership will bring together.
I love that. Beautifully, beautifully articulated. And I think just for some statistical backing of some of this stuff, my co-founder used to do or be head of SEO for Wayfair.com and then Kayak.com. And when we were first looking into how do we provide the most value for consumers, what we found is that search volume on Google for individuals typing in strain that helps with anxiety, best strains for migraines, etc. The search volume for that is equal and in some scenarios higher than people searching for beds and couches every single month, which is a staggering statistic when you think of the fact that, I don't know, most of us have beds and couches in our house. And so that really showed us, wow, there's demand, that most people are starting their education journey online. Are the current systems, platforms, blogs, resources that they have out there, are they really doing a good job providing a solution to that query on Google? And then you take it a step further and maybe they land on a dispensary. Is the dispensary actually giving them the education, the resources, the guidance, and to your point, understanding the nuance of the consumer well? And I think if I were to give it a score, I'd give it a 4.5 out of 10, quite honestly, across the board. And so we felt there's got to be a better way to help facilitate and provide a solution for that consumer. And then who else is doing education really well and is focusing on the right things and providing credible, accurate data? And that's why, to your point, this partnership exists. And it's why we then built a science advisory board of a PhD, an MD, and a PharmD, because we were like, listen, at the end of the day, we don't try to say we're the experts. We try to partner with people that we believe are credible, that are experts, that can speak to experience. And we have some of that too as well, and put our best foot forward and hold ourselves accountable into a higher standard, as I think we all should in this industry. And I think aligning ourselves with the right partnerships can do exactly that. And the benefit and the return is for that of the consumer, which we are both very much obsessed with.
Well, everybody has one health and one life, and no one lives them but you. And you and I are both here to make sure that you're living your absolute best health by giving them tools that they can utilize to make them, help them understand what they need to do for their health and how they can change that and not just turn it over to someone else. You need to be responsible for understanding your health and how it impacts. And that comes from a wealth of information from around a lot of places. One person cannot do this. One company cannot do this. And that's why everything we do at the Effective Cannabis Newsletter is all collaborative. We believe in collaboration and us expanding this as a whole. I'm not afraid of anyone and what they have, as long as it's good quality vetted information and making sure that it's accurate. Accuracy is important when it comes to this because, like I said, you only have one health and you're the only one that lives it. So we want to make sure that the information you're landing on and making choices from is actually good.
There's nothing better than when you've experienced a life of quality and where the mentally or physically, where you feel like the chains have been broken. Right? Where you've now all of a sudden have this freedom before in the physical realm or the mental realm where you feel free, you feel empowered, you feel like you have control. We want all of those things. And all of those things are in response to taking control of your health, the things that you eat, your physical activity, your mental health, how you leverage certain natural remedies like cannabis, et cetera. And so I think for us, we know how that feels. And when you know how that feels, you want everybody to have that power because you're like, you've got to try this. It's like a million times more than what we were talking about earlier. You visit somewhere beautiful and you're like, I had to take a double take because it didn't feel real. It didn't feel like it was actually there. It was like, is this a movie? And it's the same thing when you actually experience a high quality of life. You're like, there's no way I can just hold this to myself. Like everybody needs to experience this quality of life. And it's really what propelled my efforts in the mental health space with my podcast, because everybody deserves a high quality of life. We're here. The odds of being born are astronomical. Like I couldn't even say the number right now because I wouldn't even know how to say that number. You could win the lottery a million times over before you ever had another opportunity to be born again. So it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm on this planet now. How do I take the most advantage of this oxygen that I'm sucking in and the people that I run into, right? And that's all starts and stems from physical health, mental health. Bottom line, hard stop.
And I can talk to that from my own personal experience because I am medically trained as a medical technologist, worked in the medical field, but I was trained in the 70s. And then we didn't even know that the endocannabinoid system existed. And we only knew that what we called marijuana was harmful. And so for me, after living through the opiate crisis and being abandoned by my doctors, needing a 24-hour caregiver on 25 prescribed pharmaceuticals on oxygen 24 hours a day, I was left with my doctor saying, except this is your life. There's nothing more we can do for you. And we need to get you off all of this OxyContin that they'd been prescribing for decades. And I found myself fighting for my life. And so instead of saying, okay, I accept this, I said, no, I'm not going to accept that. This has to be something different. Luckily, cannabis had been legalized in my state. And I took it upon myself to learn everything that I could about cannabis and the endocannabinoid system and how it played with everything that was going on. I started it to get rid of chronic pain. Little did I know that it was going to help with my lungs and improve them and give me the ability to do what I'm doing now. So I no longer need a 24-hour caregiver. I no longer need constant oxygen. And I can tell you now, I don't live in a pain of 10 anymore. I live in a pain of 0. I don't even think about my pain when that was the only thing that controlled my life for 3 decades. So there is a possibility to make these changes, but it takes you to be at the center of that change. And that's where HashDash and Effective Cannabis Newsletter come in to give you the tools to make sure you're putting yourself in the center. I could go do anything I wanted to right now. But I made a commitment when I came out of being able to breathe for myself again when I was in the hospital and couldn't do that, that I would do everything in my power to make sure that everyone had the tools and the resources to make sure that they could live their best quality of life, whatever that may be. If today's my last day, I want it to be the best quality possible.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love that you took it upon yourself to say, I'm not willing to accept that as an answer. There's no way that this is just, I have to accept living like this. There's no possible way. And I think your personal experiences, I'm sure, preaching to the choir, provides one of the most important things for people beyond education, all this other stuff that we're talking about. It's hope. It provides hope. Right? It provides opportunity that there's something there, because when we're hopeless, there's less motivation to want to keep moving forward. And then everything falls apart. You then further neglect your health.
Oh, definitely. I think, it's really interesting being medically trained. And I did put all of my trust in doctors. And I'm not bashing doctors. We need doctors, don't get me wrong. They do play a role. But there is so much that we play a role in. And it was like when they finally told me that you have at the most 5 years, just go accept it. And that will be your life. I still had a mom that I was caring for. I had a husband. I had children. I didn't think that that was the appropriate response that any medical professional should give you. Having worked in cancer field, it's not pleasant to tell someone there is nothing more we can do for you. There is no hope. When you don't have anything to hope for or to live for, it makes it really hard to get up the next day. And I made choices through 3 decades of waiting for doctors to do for me something that they could not do, but I did. And I kept waiting for them to do something. And it was like, why am I waiting on someone else to do this when I could actually have a role in it? It takes being responsible for everything that happens in your life and how you live it and the choices that you make. But when I determined that I was going to fight, I gave myself hope. And then when I started seeing the improvements made, that hope just continued to grow. And I want anyone that is living with a serious health condition to understand that there are things you can do. Am I completely healthy? No. Would I like for it to be better? Absolutely. But I will live this life right now. I will take it any day over the life I lived for 3 decades. This is living. I was just surviving from minute to minute. That is not the quality of life we want people to have.
No, you want to be thriving, not surviving. That's barely being able to suck in some oxygen and put one foot in front of the other. That's certainly not living. That's a torturous way to live. And then on top of that, being told like that's the thing you have to accept for the rest of your life. And you look at there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of examples of this in life where someone was told you'll never walk again. You won't be able to use your left arm, or you always have this numbing on your right side of your body. All of these things where people said, I'm not going to accept that, and took control. And then all of a sudden their outcome was completely different. Back in, I think it was 2014, I got a pretty serious surgery. And I remember prior to the surgery, the doctor saying, you're going to be in excruciating pain 24 hours post-op, and then 48 is going to be really bad, and it will probably plateau at 75, 78 hours or whatever. Here are a prescription for pain medication. And in my family, there's a very addictive trait in my family where opioids and alcohol are very prevalent. It's why I haven't touched alcohol in 4 years. And I'll enjoy a cannabis seltzer as opposed to any beer, any alcohol, any day of the week. But I remember looking at the doctor and saying, you can write me the prescription, but I'm not taking it. And I explained why. And he was very respectful as to why, the reasoning. But then he asked, may I ask what you're going to do for the pain? And I said, I will be consuming cannabis. And he paused for a second. I was like waiting for him to have some sort of wise negative remark. And he said, you would not be the first of my patients to have said that they were going to use that for pain management post-op. And for that entire time in recovery, I never went and picked up the prescription for the pain medication because I knew potentially where that could lead. And I knew that cannabis was a far, far superior alternative to pain medication. And I felt so much better and so much more present than I know I would have felt on pain medications. And I've actually never taken a pain medication in my life, to be quite honest, because I fear the outcome that would come of that because of the traits in my family. And cannabis has never steered me wrong, right? I have no reliance on it. I don't need to consume every day, but I'm different. I'm a recreational consumer, just for the clarity of those that are listening. So I can choose those things. Whereas other outlets, I mean, everybody certainly has a choice, but it is way more damaging and severe and complex with those other substances for sure.
Oh, I can speak to that to a great degree from being on so many pharmaceuticals and all the side effects that I developed. But let's just talk about chronic pain for a minute. Mm-hmm. Living with complex regional pain syndrome, which is considered the worst pain symptom that there is, and it's considered a suicide disease. And living in a pain of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop, without it ever stopping, it wears on you. And it makes you wonder why you're here. And is this the quality of life that you want? I guarantee you nobody chooses to live in pain. So when somebody says, just get over it, put on your big girl panties and move on, it doesn't work that way. I tried. If it did work that way, it would have been gone.
Sure.
And that's the thing people need to understand. So pain is one of the number one reasons that people turn to cannabis today. And we will see that across the board globally, even, if that's the number one reason. But it actually has greater benefit in a lot of other areas that we don't talk about a lot. But understanding that chronic regional pain or complex regional pain syndrome, when it triggers, it's a nervous imbalance. And so it's constantly firing at a pace that your ECS cannot keep up with. It's responsible. Your ECS is responsible for sending signals when you experience pain to your pain receptors and to try to help you resolve that pain. But it gets to the point, and one of my doctors said this to me one day. He said, your pain is just constantly firing and it's never going to stop. It's just it's like on a broken circuit. It's just constantly rewiring itself. We can't rewire it, but you can. I've learned that. And so my husband and I had a conversation this morning about pain and where I'm at today. It's an ongoing conversation because we saw an article of a young lady that had complex regional pain syndrome, and she had her leg amputated to get rid of that pain. I had that conversation at the beginning to get that leg amputated because I wanted it to be gone. There's two different types. There's one that's controlled from the brain and one that's controlled from the spine. Mine was controlled from the brain. So it's kind of like anybody that has a leg amputated, you have that phantom pain and you feel that foot. Well, with complex regional pain syndrome, I would still feel the exact same amount of pain. It wouldn't stop. So foot there or not, leg there or not, I would be feeling that same amount of pain. And if we took it and there was ever a cure, we wouldn't be able to fix it because the foot would be gone.
Right.
And so engaging the ECS, I learned what happened is that it was firing so much for pain that my ECS just said, okay, I can't deal with that. So I'm not going to support that. I'm going to support all the other systems that I'm responsible for because I have a big job. And so when I introduced cannabinoids from the cannabis plant into my body, then it allowed all that stuff to start reshifting. And it's taken a long time. I went from a pain of 10 to 7 to 5 to 3, and now I can say it's 0. And that is because over time I have reformulated how my ECS responds. And if somebody hits my leg today, it recovers much faster. Yes, I consume cannabis daily. And that's the thing you need to know. It's not going to fix the problem. It's going to manage it. And it's going to work in harmony with your ECS. So we don't make claims that cannabis cures things. We make the acknowledgement that cannabis provides the support that your system is missing.
I love that. The number one condition that most of our users fill out is chronic pain and pain in general. About 80% of our platform users fill that out. And so back to your point about most people consume cannabis for pain management, spot on. And the data in our platform and many other areas, we're not alone in this, shows that too as well. Now, granted, with pain, there are obviously, to your point, so many different types of pain and levels of pain, but it makes perfect sense that a lot of consumers are looking to cannabis for this. And I think too, kind of back to the education piece, where there's awareness and hope, there's opportunity for opening someone's blind spots to say, wait a minute, is what the doctor told me, is that something that I should take for gospel? And I agree with you. Certainly we need doctors, but let's also be very honest with each other here. I could speak at least on behalf of the United States that the system's broken, severely broken. And we've been over that time and time again. Walgreens just had their $350 million lawsuit that went through by the federal government for playing its role in the opioid crisis along with pharmaceutical companies. It's gotten out of hand. It's still out of hand. I mean, here in New Hampshire, on what I like to call Prohibition Island, because it's still not adult use in every state around us is, they wanted to film Cops, the show Cops, here in Manchester, New Hampshire. And the city said no. It was too embarrassing the way things have fallen apart in the city of Manchester. And the opioid epidemic, you look it up, New Hampshire was one of the heaviest hit as far as the opioid crisis is concerned, here in New England specifically. And I just think that there's so much problems that can be fixed with cannabis. And the data is suggesting that at scale in every regard, whether it be alcohol consumption, whether it be heavy drug use. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All these things that we were told with DARE officers in high school that were just completely not even remotely close to the truth are starting to come out. And I will say, back to the doctor aspect, at least from my experience, I have seen a lot more openness and willingness with doctors, but that's not at every level. And I certainly cannot speak to everybody's experience, but just personally what I have found. So I see there, going back to that H word, hope, that things are headed in the right direction.
Well, and I think doctors should want to know about this. I know that I have been studying this for 9 years, on nonstop pretty much. And they have a practice that they're trying to do. So if we're not teaching it in med schools, how do we expect doctors to learn this? We're teaching them about the cardiovascular system. We're teaching them about the respiratory system, but we're not teaching them about this one system that controls everything. And when we start teaching that, that's when we'll start making the breakthrough that this is a system that it should be included in every treatment plan. There should be a conversation about your ECS in every treatment plan. And how is it working for you? That's dependent upon you understanding and setting with yourself and understanding what your body's talking to you about, saying to your body speaks to you daily, whether you acknowledge it or not, or whether you listen. And it's important to understand that we're a long way from having testing that we can check and see how your ECS is working. We're not there. I look forward to the day that we are because I believe it is possible. But we're not there today. But you have so much that you can do to filter in and add to that, as we've talked about here in a couple of ways of us being in tune with what's going on with our body and understanding how it's reacting to cannabinoid therapies and how it makes us feel. So, doctors play an important role in just helping us understand our overall health. And we need to make sure they have the tools themselves to do that, because I don't believe anybody goes into medicine that doesn't want to make you feel better.
Sure.
I think that's the choice that people make when they go into medicine. That's why I went into medicine, as I want to make people feel better. I want to give them a better outcome than where we are. And we're leaving out the most important system that makes all of us live in harmony within ourselves. I see our ECS as our inside DNA, just like your thumbprint DNA. And it is unique to you. And so that's why you need to be at the core of that and understanding how your health is working, what's going on, and what you need to do.
I love that. Yeah, one thing that I've experienced, at least in my network, or I would say even my generation, is that because, and I think maybe we're talking about this pre-recording, but I think we have gotten so far away from listening to our bodies. And I think a big part of that is the massive overstimulation that happens in our world that takes us away from the conduits of information that our body's passing along to us. For many reasons that we've captured thus far, but I think that is a massive part of it. Because ask someone, tell me what you're experiencing, and just listen to the way that they describe it. You can tell that there's a disconnect from what they're experiencing and how to read even what their body is telling them, right? It's kind of mind-blowing to me that today people struggle to operate without their phone or separate from any sort of screen. But I think all of those things at a rudimentary level are the basis and foundation to understanding your body, and go back into this collective conversation around your health and why it's so important. When you're constantly stimulated, when you're not alone, when you're not listening to these things, when you're not able to describe these things. And that was one of actually my journey into cannabis with anxiety was, what am I experiencing? How is it making me feel? What are the repercussions of those things? What are options that I have or haven't looked at? And what alternatives may be better than the path of pharmaceuticals or the traditional path? And that's how I originally landed on cannabis, was through that exploration. But if I didn't set the computer aside, if I didn't put the phone aside, and I didn't grab out a blank piece of paper and just started writing what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what it feels like in my fingers, how that's connecting to my mind and body, well, then I probably wouldn't be in this industry doing the things that I'm doing today. But I think that's a struggle for so many people, again, at least in my generation, that are so over-indexed into technology. And listen, this is coming from a guy who runs a technology company. It's important to have separation of church and state, and they both serve their purposes. But currently we live in a world where that's the main source of our dopamine, of all of that stuff, and we start to crowd out the important things, which is actually being in tune to our bodies.
Well, and I think we also have a tendency now today, and in particular because we have so much noise around us, to be looking at someone else and what are they doing, so I need to do what they're doing. And this is the thing, is that you're a unique person and you were born and designed to be a unique person. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to be looking elsewhere for that. Mm-hmm. You need to be looking inward. And one of the practices that I do is I sit with myself every day and I consume cannabis and I listen to what my thoughts are and what my body's saying. And we have over 50,000 thoughts a day, but you get to choose which ones you want to live with and don't want to live with. And so you need to learn how to filter those things out to see what serves you well, because we are bombarded with a ton of information today. And just if you scroll through Instagram, Facebook, whatever your favorite social media platform is, it's overwhelming for me to look at the things that are being said. How many people will tell you that, oh, I get so many emails every day. I do this in 24 hours, you'll never have chronic pain again. Okay, let's get real. It's taken me years to get here. It's not something I did overnight. Yes. And there is no quick fix to what's going on in your life. It's considered you sitting down and being true to yourself. We don't allow people to talk about health today. I've been thinking about this a lot. When do we just have real open conversations about health? We
Very
do
rare
because we're in this industry.
Yes.
But in general, you ask someone, how do you feel today? Are they honest with you?
No, most of the time it's, oh, I'm good. Things are good. You know, it's this very generic small talk response.
And why is that?
I think, one, we struggle as a species to be vulnerable with each other. And I think vulnerability leads to acceptance. I think, two, we're never taught, even from a very young age, how to express our emotions or even describe them or what they mean or how to work through them. And I think number three, and this could link back to number one, is that specifically speaking for men, there is an indication of weakness that when you express vulnerability or struggle, or you talk about anxiety or depression or these other things, when I think it's quite the opposite. If you have the willingness to stand up on the podium and raise your hand and say, hey, I need help, I'm struggling, I'm not feeling my best, that takes way more guts than just burying it and moving on with your day. So I think it's maybe not specifically one thing. I think it's a collection of reasons as to why we struggle to communicate those things to one another. It's why I'm constantly vulnerable and an open book, because it's like, listen, we're all going through the same things. And you realize when you start to listen to people who are honest, like these conversations that we're having, you go, oh, wow, you're dealing with that too? It's like, sweetheart, we're all dealing with it in different degrees. And sure, it's very nuanced to what you had mentioned earlier, but we're all dealing with some form of anxiety or depression or high stress and overstimulation. It's now this world that we live in. And so how do we manage it? How do we work within the environment with the tools that we have? And that's where I think that it isn't one size that fits all, and it isn't one tool that will be solution, right? It's platforms like HashDash, newsletters like Effective Cannabis. It's multiple resources. I think, if you walked up into a construction site and you didn't know what you were getting into, you're going to have multiple tools. You have some electrical tools, you have some plumbing tools, you have some framing tools. Okay, well, I think about our health the same way. Like, how do you build out the toolbox for your mental and physical health? And one of those things is figuring out, how do I find a support system? How do I understand myself better, my physical, my mental health? How do I communicate better? How do I accept myself? How do I give myself a little bit of grace too as I go through all of this? I think it's a combination of all those things.
I agree, but I think it's also that having bad health is not it's not you complaining. It's you being honest about how you feel. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot of people say, well, I don't want to complain. I posted or said something the other day about I had an infusion because I have a compromised immune system, and I was not feeling my best. And I said, but I don't want you to think this is a complaint. I'm just telling you I'm not at my best today, and this is why. Because I am so far better today than I was forever, for years.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not complaining. You just asked me, how am I feeling? And I'm being honest about it. And when you're honest about it, then people can meet you where you are and give you the support that you need. And maybe they feel the same way today. And now they can open up and say, I'm not feeling so great today either. And then you become a resource for one another in that moment. So being open and being able to talk about your health is one of the things that I think is truly missing. And I think that is really important that we start building in. And that's what we're here to do as collabing as HashDash and Effective Cannabis, to actually give people the platforms and the spaces where they can start exploring and doing that.
Yeah, I love that you said this. It's not complaining. So mindset is important to me. It's one of the things that I focus on the mental health side. And the way that I like to frame it or think about it is, if you want to trigger, we all tell ourselves stories, right? We're born into stories. We're told stories from our parents, from teachers, from doctors. I mean, you name it, the list goes on and on, that we tell ourselves. And that starts to construe reality. And so we live in this kind of self-built matrix of stories built up years and years of conditioning and experiences and so on and so forth. I have found that the way that you speak to yourself is one of the most important things. And if maybe what I would ask everybody to do or think about listening is that if you feel that you expressing the pain that you're going through, the emotions that you're feeling as a complaint, I would invite you to frame it differently by taking action on your health, by doing the due diligence. Because if you're doing those things and you're providing those individuals, whether they be a doctor or within your network, as to what you're going through, well, then it's going to feel less of a complaint because you're doing something about it. But if you're not doing anything about it and you're just vocalizing these things and this frustration, which sure, that's a human right and component that we have to do those things. But if you have that voice in the back of your head that's like, hey, Stacy, we're just complaining here. Well, the way you can empower yourself is by taking control of your health, so that when you do express what you're going through, it doesn't feel so much like a complaint, because on the other hand, what you're holding is education, resources, research, and all of these other things. And so it balances out the equation for you.
And I say, I want you to go back and think about when you were a kid. When you were a kid, you were curious. I've developed my whole health since I started cannabis around nursery rhymes, Alice in Wonderland, Princess and the Pea. Because of my complex regional pain syndrome, I could have a boot on that had a heel this high, and I could feel a hair underneath it. So I could relate to Princess and the Pea. Goldilocks and the Three Bears, she was always looking for that just right. And then there's Humpty Dumpty. So I've taken those four characters and molded them into my health history and how I look at this. And I've allowed myself to go back to being young again and being curious. And I think when we do that, that opens up doors. At some point in our life, we build this barrier to where we can't have that childlike ability anymore. And we lose that. And I think that's so bad. I think we need to recapture that and bring that in. And so allow yourself to have that curiosity, allow yourself to have that freedom to be open and explore. Because when you do, you'll be really, truly amazed at what you find.
Yes. I have been reliving this with a 2-year-old daughter that always asks, why? And at first you can go, oh, so annoying. But then you realize you get to so many whys deep into her question. You go, actually, why is that? And we just accept a lot of things, accept, the thing that the doctor told us as gospel, and just move on. And I think a large part of that is because we are not taught how to think critically, right? We are being taught what to think, not how to think. And those are two very, 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 very different things. And that could be a whole episode in itself. But I think that's what certainly stifles our ability as a species to be curious as to, why do things work this way? Why is that? And I think everything should be followed by a why. There's a great company system. It's called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And one of the things that they teach you, or one of the things that you do in a meeting, is IDS. It's called Identify, Discover, or Discuss, and Solve, right? And one of the great examples would be, and this kind of links back to everything, is you have a manufacturing facility and a piece of equipment goes down. Okay, well, right away you go, well, the piece of equipment's down, so that was the problem. Okay, but why was the piece of equipment down? Well, because one of the augers seized up. Okay, why did one of the augers seize up? Well, it wasn't properly lubricated. Okay, why was it not properly lubricated? Oh, Steve didn't lubricate it. Okay, we could drop the ball there and say it was Steve's fault, but we go, why didn't Steve properly lubricate it? Well, he was never told by management that he should have actually been lubricating this once a month. Okay, so it was improper training from the manager, not just plainly that the system went down. And so I think when we're approaching everything in life, we should ask those 5 whys. Why did I get that answer? Why did they think that was the answer? Why are they telling me this, right? Are there alternatives? And the list goes on and on. Then you start to unlock so much information, and you find that this one singular thing has about 20 different branches that go off. Now, of course, you got to be careful of overthinking and analysis paralysis and all this other stuff. But I think that starts to open your eyes that there are thousands and thousands of alternatives. 2 things can be true at the same time. Life is not as binary as we think. And that's because our brain, in order to make things simplified and less complex, we put things into buckets. And that's why we think very binary. So it's partially how our brain is meant to operate, and then how traditional society puts us into a bucket and a line, and then we follow that thing and don't question it, right? And so you've got to retrain, to your point, you've got to rewire all of these different things in your life in order to function different and have a different outcome.
Well, and your health will fall in one of 3 buckets in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You have good health, poor health, and something in the middle. Mm-hmm. And so when are you going to start paying attention? And it should start right here where you have good health. But for me, it came when I had poor health. Mm-hmm. And so I went back and reread those nursery rhymes and allowed myself to go back and see the learning lessons from those and opened that door. And so, I hope everyone that's listening will stop and think about where their health is and what can they do to make and take charge of it, because your health is your most valuable asset for you living your best life. Without good quality health, you do not live a good quality life.
Mic drop.
We so appreciate you dropping in. Just a quick reminder, the information we're sharing today is for health awareness only. It is not medical advice or a substitute for consulting your doctor. It is here to help you learn, ask the right questions, and make informed decisions about your health and your care. Your time and support are invaluable as we strive to educate and advocate for the transformative potential of medical cannabis. Remember, you have only one health and one life, and no one lives them but you. Let's continue this journey together. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest conversation. Your comments and engagement fuel the dialogue we need to create change. Until next time, stay empowered and keep exploring the wonders of your endocannabinoid system.